Carol.
30 minutes to 8. A report on the riots in England last summer has said there are 500,000 forgotten families who need help from the government. It also said bad parenting was partly to blame for the violence.
The full report by the Riots, Communities and Victims panel is officially published this morning after a draft of it was leaked yesterday.
It identifies a number of issues that it says need to be tackled. Among its recommendations, a suggestion that schools should help to build character.
Well, to talk all about it, joining us now in the studio is Darra Singh, the chair of the Riots, Communities and Victims panel, and National Union of Teachers member Jerry Glazier. Morning both. Thanks very much for joining us. Darra, obviously a lot in this report. Let's just talk specifically about schools, and you're saying they could have a role in all of this. What would you like them to do?
Well, actually, schools are a pivotal and a fundamental part of growing up for young people. And the purpose of this report, which is our second and final report, is to really focus on how we divert the potential writer of tomorrow from that course of action. And one of the things that people told us as we went round the country to lots of areas where there were riots was actually, why is it that some people who live in very challenging circumstances didn't riot, which was the majority didn't riot, and some did. And actually they came to this point of character. And we thought that actually where parents are failing to actually support young people in terms of developing character, that actually schools should play a role.
Right. Joe, the report also says 1/5 of school leavers have the literacy levels at or below that expected of an 11-year-old. So when they leave school, they've got 11-year-old literacy, and schools should be penalised if pupils leave without being able to read or write properly.
I think that's actually a ridiculous idea. Schools do their very best in often very challenging circumstances, and I think schools need to be recognised for what they're doing. Penalising schools won't help to resolve the problem. What we need to ensure are adequate numbers of teachers, smaller classes, more resources for schools, and other additional backup support, specialist support, because some of these children who are finding it difficult to access literacy do need an awful lot of effort and an awful lot of attention. It's very expensive, and schools are finding it difficult to do that.
Is it that expensive to teach people to read and write properly? I mean, in the old days it was done with the chalk and the slate.
Well, there are many complex issues now interfering with a pupil's ability to learn. And I think where the report is absolutely right is it's recognising all the circumstances. It's a complex issue. It's to do with parenting, it's to do with home circumstances, it's to do with poverty, it's to do with a whole range of things. Schools do their very best, but they need supporting with other agencies as well.
I'm very interested in what you said about character as well, because, you know, what defines character? How do you build, you talk about in the report, don't you, building strength of character. How does a school do that? How does anybody do that?
Well, actually, we've seen some interesting examples of schools, some schools already doing this, and there are models in the US and in Australia. There's an interesting scheme actually using an Australian model in Scotland that rolled out across schools from 2008, which actually is about incorporating through the curriculum. This is not at the expense of academic qualifications. All the evidence shows that actually if you work on character, it helps pupils' performance, and also helps them in the labour market, because a lot of parents said to us, and a lot of people said, actually schools need to be better in terms of preparing young people for work and for life after school. Can I just comment on this point about literacy? It's not acceptable, I don't think, that 1 in 5 children or school leavers have the literacy skills of an 11-year-old or below. We spend between £6,000 and £18,000 per year per pupil, and the people we're talking about are those who are at the higher end of that spend. And we've been to pupil referral units, very challenging schools that do a great job, and we celebrate good teaching. And our call really now is actually all schools should lift themselves up to that standard.
Do you accept, Jerry, that educational standards, or the lack of them in certain cases, did have something to do with people rioting?
I think that's inevitably the case, that pupil disaffection is something which is endemic, and it goes back to often parental attitude as well that will reinforce a negative view about schools. So we need to break the cycle, and breaking that cycle is quite difficult for the school to do on its own. We need to ensure there are adequate resources from other agencies who will help to support learning, and schools can do what they can do, but we're seeing a breakdown of things like careers service, which don't help in terms of adding to the aspirations of these pupils. And it's the hopelessness which you refer to in your report that some students feel is so frustrating to teachers, and teachers want to break the cycle of attitude, the cycle of deprivation, but we're finding that out there in the schools the situation is getting worse, not better, and certainly the poverty element, which is an explanation, not an excuse, is increasing.
I'm fascinated by this, by what you're both saying, but particularly about this sort of strength of character. You're saying that actually there should be regular assessments of pupils' strength of character. How do you measure that anyway?
Well, what we're saying, just to be clear, is that
Yeah.
actually most young people, most children actually get that the kind of the tools to equip them to make a positive contribution in their adult life, actually from their parents and their wider family and from other networks. But there are a group actually where parents are failing for whatever reason, where actually inevitably schools are the only part of their life which is structured. And regimented to some extent. And so we're arguing that learning from the best, so the schools in Scotland that we saw, some of the excellent examples we've seen in pupil referral units and other alternative provision in West London, in South London, that actually there are techniques, and we've given some examples in our report. But what we're not saying is, given that schools are increasingly autonomous, we want a sharper accountability on schools, but they need to actually work out how to do this best themselves, learning from best practice.
Okay. All right. Darra Singh, Jerry Glazier, thank you both very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's 7 minutes.